Well, thanks for staying with us on the program as we look at all the issues in the news, but still reflecting on the spirit of national mourning. We'll still discuss the interment of the late President Muhammadu Buhari before we delve on those other issues. One of those other issues is an eminent call from Alhaji Aliko Dangote to wealthy Nigerians on the need to invest in Nigeria, as he has also condemned capital flight with the excuse from some wealthy Nigerians that there's a high level of corruption in the country and hence why they have failed to invest in the country. Our next guest on the program is a political analyst who will be lending his thoughts to this conversation. We also remind you that you too can have a say in the conversations. Don't forget that we're very much active across our social media pages. We're now joined by Zariyi Yusuf on the program this morning. Good morning to you, Mr. Yusuf.
Yes, good morning.
Welcome to the program. Well, it's a period of national mourning. There have been mixed reactions from Nigerians on the passing of our late president. I'd like to get your thoughts as regards the demise and interment of the late president in his hometown of Daura in Katsina yesterday.
Well, I sat somewhere where conversations were going on regarding his demise, and I didn't really understand that he died. So I retired to my room, and then all of a sudden I was going through news items and I saw that, and I came out. I said, "What, did you hear that Buhari died?" And they said, yeah, that was what we were discussing. And I said, I don't know where my mind was. I didn't, catch up with that. The first thing that struck me was basically the feeling of being human. First of all, I felt for people to whom he was a father, the woman to whom he was a husband or woman, the people he was a sibling to, maybe a mentor and all of that. And then, of course, in their, military career, those with whom they fought side by side as comrades. So yes, it was heartbreaking for me when I saw that, because I immediately, within seconds, I connected with my own father. I stood right over his head when he drew his last breath. So I tried to picture. So of him, I just pictured what the wife could feel, what the son, what the daughters, what friends, and all of that. But then, not long after that, of course, the social media went on fire with different opinions. People saying, well, if he had a better hospital in Nigeria, what would he be doing in a very expensive clinic in the UK, in London? Somebody said, why would he be in a clinic if it was so dire? He didn't just go to test his, BP and all of that. And then people began talking about legacies and all of that. Now, I want to say that much as we could connect with that humanity, now, talking about not him as an individual, talking about children who have lost a father, a wife who has lost a husband, a sibling who has lost a brother. It is also a fact that he has his own CV as far as Nigeria is concerned. From 2015 to 2023, when he handed power over.
And even from 1983 to 1985.
That's right. That's right. I remember very well when he came out to contest. I didn't vote for him. I never supported him. But many people felt this is an opportunity to come up with something different. This is a man we believe will not steal. This is a man we believe has been running for a long time. So he does have a determination to fix things. Much as I didn't vote him, I believe those who did believed something was going to happen. But then you would come across elderly people, regardless of religion and ethnicity, that would say to you, I wish you were an adult when he was a military dictator. You would understand he has nothing to offer. So there were warnings. And some of us who did not vote for him did so because of what we feared could have been the ethno-religious, fanaticism, bigotry, and all of that that was already entrenched, especially with what happened in 2011 and all of that. So his death, much as it was painful, when you look at it from the side of those who missed him as whatever he was to them, it equally stirred up a lot of issues. Primarily, maybe just to immediately answer the question, one of that is that I would always remember his regime from 2015 to 2023 as the period where Nigeria, the federal government of Nigeria, became a darling of terrorism. Prior to that, it was easy to proscribe a group that had terrorist tendencies. But once he came in, it looked as if what makes a group terrorist or not had to do with religious or ethnic, bond between that group and whoever runs the federal government. And what made it more painful was because I use the word darling because you found a scenario where the government embraced a group of terrorists. Yes, they call them repentant.
And they reintegrate them back into society.
Yes, so I'm picturing a case, especially when it was localized in the Northeast, where you find women in dehumanized IDP camps. A lot of them have been raped. A lot of men just live on alcohol because he was forced to watch unspeakable things done to his daughters and his children. A lot of children live like people who are bastards because somebody has orphaned them. So they were right there when luxury buses were moving around with people who have been sewn new clothes. They are being flown around and they are being given the media attention and all of that. So the tradition of going to bed with terrorism was basically entrenched in Nigeria by his regime. So much as you would feel there's a boy that has lost a father, there's a woman that has lost a husband. Yes, we are human. But the truth of the matter is that as much as that is real, whatever mess Nigeria is in today, whatever path of retrogression Nigeria has been set upon was basically by his hands. So we can't change that. It's quite unfortunate. And I would say to you that even Satan, if he was a citizen of Nigeria and is resident in Nigeria, he will attest to this fact. Not only will he attest to this fact, but he will also be paying dearly for the consequences of getting him into office in 2015.
Now, listening to you, it's quite the paradox in everything that has happened owing to his involvement in governance, his time as a military head of state as well. But looking at this paradoxical way people will remember him for, starting with the first point you made, his passing in a London hospital. There are some African leaders who had told that part. The likes of Robert Mugabe passed away in a foreign hospital, unlike the likes of Nelson Mandela, who chose to pass away at home. It's with focus on lessons to be learned.
That's right.
Now, I'm listening to one of his media aides, Mr. Femi Adesina. He said that should the late president had chosen healthcare facilities in Nigeria, he might have died longer than he did. This statement has been viewed as one that has largely...
I would call it a very irresponsible statement coming from an unrepentant mind. As a matter of fact, once the name of Femi Adesina is mentioned, the first thing I remember is his comments after virtually every massacre, especially in the Middle Belt. Then I think Benue was the spotlight, and he would say, you want to defend your land. Of what value is it when you people are killed? Because then the idea was so that the people stop killing you, let them have the land and all of that. Femi Adesina he did a poor job while Buhari was in office. And I said irresponsible and unrepentant because you failed to fix the economy. I mean, look at the billions that were spent just a couple of weeks before he left office to fix some kind of clinic in the presidency. And you are telling people if he was in Nigeria, he would have died a long time ago. Who doesn't die? Definitely he will die one day. Definitely Femi Adesina will die one day. Definitely I will die one day. But of what sense is it pursuing what you believe is a superior kind of medical attention from a foreign land while you have depleted the economy of the country in the name of fixing what's here? An example is, how do I tell you that I've fixed the police force, I've fixed security, have fixed the military, and now our streets are free of hoodlums and all of that. But you discover that I have either Mossad agents or CIA agents or some foreign security guys securing me. It doesn't really add up. So it's just, even in his death, it demonstrates the irresponsibility of the kind of people he surrounded himself with. Because I think it's unfortunate, especially with the kinds of things that the president propounded before he came into office, that after his death, in a London clinic, somebody would come out and tell you if he had been in Nigeria, he would have died a long time ago. What is wrong with dying, a long time ago? Yar'Adua was there, a far better president, a far more committed, human being, a far more determined person, a far more loved individual that was sincere in his commitment to Nigeria. For whatever reason, he didn't last long.
Now, not to compare,
Okay.
but the previous guest on the program also referred to the passing of the late President Yar'Adua and the state honors that the late President Muhammadu Buhari received yesterday. To your best of knowledge, was there any difference in the full honors given to both presidents following their interments?
One is, let me use the word is because it's the late one. One is more of a political stunt. The other was a nation mourning their son, a leader, a true servant. Whatever happened yesterday in Daura, because I ran through social media and I saw people hailing politicians. It didn't look like mourning. I saw people hailing their own politicians, and I saw people trying to see the kind of welcome this politician got when he landed, the kind of welcome this one has, see how he received this kind of welcome in Kazana. It was less about the late president. So if I would tell you two things, yes, he does have supporters, but then a scenario where even in Kazana you have children running the streets celebrating and saying he died, Buhari Amutu, it's quite unfortunate, and I'm very certain it's because they trusted him to deliver something, and he failed woefully. He performed underwhelmingly.
Now, one of such image greeting the screen right now is President Bola Ahmed Tinubu bowing before the remains of late President Muhammadu Buhari right before he was laid to rest in the ground. How much of a message can you deduce from this?
I think he owes him that. He owes him that, regardless of how patriotic, regardless of how well or bad he served the country. Because, the late president is the only reason why Tinubu is in office.
Only reason? Why do you say so?
Yes, he's the only reason, because it was a duty of handing over power. It was a duty of making sure our party does not lose. It was a duty of, considering the elections. Of course, that's not the topic of our conversation, but
it is also because I know you talked about how the former media aides did not really live up to expectation. A current media aide, Mr. Bayo Nanuga, has also posted throwback videos of campaigns in Ibadan, speaking to the point you're just making of President Muhammadu Buhari being the only reason why President Bola Ahmed Tinubu emerged a successor.
That's right.
So you're right on course. Feel free to express yourself.
Yeah, so what I'm saying is there was a point in time when he almost got discouraged. The reason is because he didn't understand the body language of the president. And I think the president had to be, I'd say, forced or prevailed upon to begin to show that, yes, I'm together with this man and all of that. And even at that, people from my camp will tell you he's not there, not necessarily because of the number of votes he got. The whole thing was massively rigged and all of that. But you would have thought that a man who, at least in the case of 2015, it did look like a victory, even though Goodluck was in a hurry to, concede power because he wanted to avoid something that basically would have been a civil war, to the best of my understanding. So, looking at the massive rigging and all of that, it will only take party loyalty. It will only take that cultic loyalty to hand over power to this present regime. And so, regardless of how he performed, regardless of how patriotic he was, he owes him that as a political gesture. There are no two ways about it. So when I look at that, much as I feel bad that somebody is dead and his family would mourn and all of that, I am not blind to the stunts that are being pulled around his burial.
On a personal level now, do you think that there are particular color of fabrics that should be worn to certain ceremonies? And I asked because twice now, President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, from some of the responses I've seen online, has come under fire for the choice of color of outfits. He's not the only one. The former River State Governor Rotimi Amechi also received some stick for his choice of outfits. Do you think that, would I call it intentionality, or maybe those around him probably failed to point that out?
When you see what happened, like I caught a statement that said, somebody said, Atiku is the next Buhari of the North, ABC is the next Buhari of the this, blah 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 is the next. So it looked more like a contest of who appears like
the figurehead,
the next figure after the demise of this individual. So frankly speaking, all I saw was a competition. And while it was okay for somebody like Amechi to put any color and go there, but it looked like he was going for a particular occasion and all. Like I said, it didn't. Primarily, I would risk saying it was less of a matter of mourning to most of them. It was just a struggle to seize whatever mantles they felt he held. Basically, that is why. So like I said, in the case of Tinubu, politically speaking, he owes him that, whether he mourns for him and all of, because I know at some point the media ate virtually every failure they would want to attribute it to Buhari, which is not wrong, but it's not exactly as if they are doing so to fix anything. But he's dead now and they are all there. Rotimi Amechi was there, and so it was basically what people say, weddings. You are supposed to witness the solemnization of two individuals, but you just have your bath, you dress well, you use your expensive perfume, and you head straight to the reception venue. You want a particular seat, you want to display money and all of that. So what I saw undermined the notion of mourning as far as the death of Buhari was concerned. It's a painful loss to be human, but I just saw a ground for political stunts for most of these politicians. That basically is what I saw. So with addressing, it might have been intentional, it might not have been, but I don't really think they were so much of, they were friends of convenience. They weren't really that bonded.
Now in contrast, another reaction I saw before coming on air was reactions to the image and photographs of Governor Diko Rada profusely shedding tears. Many see it, were saying that it's from the perspective of his relationship, especially his political emergence, and a sense of less or loss following the demise of the president. What do you interpret from Governor Diko Rada's disposition to the death of President Muhammadu Buhari?
Yeah, it could be genuine. It could be genuine. In his own case, I think it would be a genuine thing because, and I'm sorry to make this example, but I'm sure if Satan died today, there are people that would cry. Let's just put it that way. So there would be people that genuinely miss him. There are people that genuinely wish he was still alive. He held a certain moral and political fort for a lot of politicians. So yes, if he cries, it could be very well understood, and he would be very much in his right to do so. So I would also feel for him, in that scenario, just like his son would cry, his wife would cry, and all of that. So that could actually be sincere, especially looking at the political benefits, personal political benefits they got from him. Yes.
Now, quite interestingly, beyond individuals, now institutions, particularly within the ministries, departments, and agencies of government, have been instructed to open condolence registers at their various physical offices across the country. But then again, one institution that has taken it a step further by also taking a week's recess, the National Assembly, has received some stick by Nigerians for that decision. In your opinion, what do you make of that 1 week recess in mourning the late president?
the National Assembly is a place where I say they collect tens of millions for doing nothing.
Nothing?
So basically, it's more or less what a good excuse to just stay away from duty and all that. But actually, what have they been doing? If
They've
they were
begun the
reporting
constitutional
daily?
review across Nigeria, and people are looking at it as one of the, would I call it, applaudable things to engage in public opinions on a debate on our constitution, but for this 1 week recess.
Yes, well, for going on the recess for 1 week is not. I don't know if that has ever happened.
Following the demise of a president.
Yes, it has never happened. Even when one in office died, it didn't really go that way. The reason is not because they didn't value him, but they had a clear understanding of what mourning was. An example is, it doesn't have to be an instruction that you have to open. You can't stage mourning. You can't stage mourning. It's all right to mourn, and I don't have a problem with anybody who is mourning, but the problem is that much as it's okay to mourn, people are overwhelmed by certain realities. And the truth of the matter is that he can't be disconnected from the origin of most of them. You understand? So it's more or less a case where, like I said, you find different parts of the North that were fanatically out for him. People who even killed others because he lost in 2011. Celebrating because he died. And the simple reason is because they felt betrayed. That basically is the word most of them use. They say, Mayoderini. He presented himself as an honest man, as a man who came to
Also
rescue
earned
the
the nickname
Megaskia. And at the end of the day, he did nothing in that regard. So a lot of people felt betrayed. Whether in the first tenure of him, or whatever it was they were told, and then they still went ahead and supported him in the second tenure, even though we believe he didn't win, but whatever it was that happened, he had the second chance to do that. So there is that pain, there is that anger, there is that unforgiveness in the hearts of Nigerians. The reason is simple. We are practically bearing the consequences of that.
Now, if we look at his antecedents, whilst as a military person, he was involved in a number of coups. Some successful, some failed coups. But one that brought him into power was when he toppled Shehu Shagari.
That's right.
In the wake of 1983. Now, post-military and now as a civilian president, he's also taken quite strong decisions, made certain rhetorics for which he would forever be remembered for, one of which was Nigerian youths are lazy. But before his exit from office, he publicly tendered an apology, asking all those who he has hurt, toes he has stepped on, to find it in their hearts to forgive him. How instructive was that?
Well, it would have made sense if he was heading a department or a ministry of the government. It would have made sense if he was a local government chairman or the principal of a school, or heading any agency where a little reshuffling of policies could be seen, the results could be seen in a couple of weeks or months. But you don't mount the highest chair in a country of 250 million people, and after 8 years of messing their economy up, you think that sorry should do it. That was him trying to appeal to the falsehood that brought him into power in 2015. Oh, this is an honest man to have agreed that he has hurt people and he's saying sorry. You don't do that. 8 years is a very, very long time. You don't do that, especially having set the country or handed the country over to another one of your political benefactor, because Tinubu will basically tell you, and to a large extent he is right to tell you, that if not because of him, Buhari wouldn't have become a president. The very same way that if not because of Buhari, Tinubu would not have become a president, especially with how the elections went. So you don't do that for 8 years and then hand the country over to basically what we are in, and then you think sorry should do it. That was a mockery, to the best of my understanding. Now, he would have just left quietly.
Now, they say in every man there's a bit of good and there's a bit of evil. What would be some of the good that the late President Muhammadu Buhari will be remembered for? Because one thing I seem to see Nigerians have a consensus on is his role in infrastructure, even though that came at the cost of borrowing. They say that this would be some of the good he would be forever remembered for. Do you agree?
Well, I think I wouldn't really say so much about infrastructure? Because it's in Nigeria that, because of poor governance, the basic performance that a government should, be seen to do for its citizens, being ticked as something to applaud. An example is, why should a state governor be applauded because he built roads? Those are basic things. Why should you be applauded because you fixed hospitals? Why should you be applauded because you fixed education? You should be applauded for certain other policies that should give the country an edge over other countries. But every day we are living in a scenario where that basically is the reason why nowadays everybody would visit their states, and because they made one overhead bridge and they put street lights, then you use drone and snap it in the night, and then you keep saying our governor is performing. So it's simply because whatever should be right for a governor or a government to do, in Nigeria it's a privilege. You buy buses, or you try to do something, bring some palliative and means of transportation, and then you put your picture on it and all of that. What actually I would appreciate him for, because it's not exactly as if I'm a hater of him, I'm just a realist who will tell you he did a lot of mess, is the fact that there was a particular interview I saw, and he did make a very, very sound argument in it. Whoever advised him, or if it was his decision, that was okay. Where this removal of subsidy that this president was in a haste to do, as if he had a plan, which he didn't. He did mention countries that whose economical strength depends on their production. They have a production economy. They could attempt to play games, little games in matters of subsidies and all of that. Because once a certain policy does not work, if it is a production economy, it's a lot easier to fall back to certain things. So that was him addressing the question of, he said a lot, but summarily this was what he said, addressing the country where he would not remove subsidy. So he had that understanding of how it would impact on the masses, and it could likely get out of hands. And then the other likelihood is you just keep borrowing more, which is basically what this man did. So it would be assumed that having done that, we would begin to see certain things. So when I say, okay, this looks good, and they say, yeah, that's because, subsidy.
Now let's talk policies. In line with the subsidy removal was the PIA of 2021. Many are also saying the credit should go to him as well.
When you say PIA?
The Petroleum Industry Act.
Okay.
Saying he assented to it whilst in office, and conversations on its implementation began under him.
Well, yeah, I'd say, the thing with Nigerian government is, right from when I became interested in whatever government is, whoever the leader is and all of that, when we don't have a policy as a country. Let me just put it that way. We don't have an economic policy as a country. Whoever gets into power tries to make his own mark. Whoever comes after him tries to make his own mark. Whoever comes after him tries to make his own mark. And if the APC had an ideology, possibly, first, I don't think there would have been the haste in removing subsidy, and then whatever a policy is would have been sustained to at least make a certain kind of impact. And to be very honest with you, I don't even have an idea about what you just mentioned.
The PIA.
Because
some certain components of the PIA include the 13% derivation for oil-producing communities. Some of those are also in fighting for the social justice to communities that have been more or less left in shambles after oil exploration begun. So that was a document that spelled hope for particularly in Niger Delta communities, and also looked to curb the amount of theft in our oil industry.
Has that materialized? Has that materialized and all? Because we upload a whole lot, just the way we uploaded Tinubu for the autonomy of local governments and all of that. But what does it ever go beyond such things? Actually, the answer is no. And that's the reason why partly I'll say to you, not many people are interested in those things because it just doesn't even happen. The only things that are quick
The lack
to
of
happen,
implementation of such
yes, the
policies.
only things that are quick to happen are those things that take away from the masses. If it takes away from the masses, like unreasonable taxes, like the removal of subsidy, like a whole lot of things that don't make sense, it's easy to do so because you've eaten up whatever it is the country has. You've borrowed up, you're sharing, you're eating, you're buying luxuries and all of that. So much as the impact is not on the government, there is a speed in implementing those things. But once a moral will is required, once moral will is required from the government to implement anything, it doesn't even make sense. There are many people that actually don't care whether the country gets fixed or not, even though I'm not one of them, but there are a whole lot of things that don't make sense to any Nigerian.
Now let's speak on another policy before we move to another subject in the news. The Electoral Act reforms of 2022. It's part of the goods he has been applauded for, but it also came with a thin line of criticism saying people are asking why he didn't implement it before his second term election, saying that he only did it whilst he was done with his eight years term.
I think one of the key features of that would be the IREV, which was a massive failure, which, you know, to a large extent, that electronic transmission of results and certain other things that at the end of the day was left to the interpretation of INEC, however it deemed necessary, and all of that. So it was a reform that a lot of people till date will tell you, yeah, he did something. But then how far has it gone to change anything in our elections? The last election was like any other one, where there was nothing in place to check rigging. And I always tell people, the last election was not actually rigged at the polling units. The electoral umpire was basically hired to rig the election.
Was culpable based on the failure to transmit in real time?
Yeah, because there were a lot of things that didn't correlate. Yes, it should be able, that should be, because people have always asked, even though people, those who want to sound too intellectual would want to dismiss it, but if the banks, for example, I always say, if I go to Oshogbo today and I could just see any ATM machine and make my withdrawal regardless of what bank it is and all of that, I think even in terms of election, we should, between this administration to the next electoral season, we should be able to master that.
Replicate what is obtainable in the banking system.
Where I could vote anywhere in Nigeria, and once the machine records that I've voted, I can't do it anywhere else.
Do you think this takes away the element of when people talk about how many votes were produced in a certain state and how that should translate to attracting some level of attention from the federal government in terms of projects and whatever allocations are coming?
No, it doesn't, because when you do that, then you are most undesirable. That I remember one of the statements.
Buhari, but you know, that's where we are now in the country. Buhari, people talk about how many votes were produced from a certain state, where you lost and where you didn't lose.
Yeah.
So electronic voting might take away that element.
No, with that, no, it's not about taking away that element. Electronic voting, actually will take away that element, but it's an unfortunate part of it's a. I think if a president reasons in that line, or any citizen reasons in that line, it's unpatriotic. It's what do I call it? You are more or less, it should be dealt with as what do you call this when you sabotage your country's interest? Basically, that is basically how you should be seen.
Treasonable offense?
Yes. Buhari had that reasoning. Nasir El-Rufai, who I would say his political protege, had the same kind of reasoning, because they have actually voiced it, that you don't expect that where I got 2,000 votes should be the same with where I got 30 votes. I can't give them similar attention. That would be a government functionary acting treacherously, betraying his oath of office. Basically, that's the whole idea.
But do you believe Nigeria can mature, especially in the political landscape, to accommodate this unity beyond regions, ethnicity, and tribe? Because it seems to be one of our stumbling blocks.
The closest we got to ending that was in 2023. Because for the first time, Nigeria had a candidate that was not a political godson of any old crook, nor a trained puppet of any foreign power. But unfortunately, that didn't materialize. But for as long as in politics, there is somebody you sit down with, and this man says, of this 100 billion, I need 5%, I need 8, I need this, and then whatever is left of it, you will know how to figure things out. And so we will back you and you get into power. What most of the political leaders do today is to appease the people that got them there. And the reason why the masses are suffering is because they did not get them there. That basically is the problem. For as long as that has not happened, for as long as we don't purge the system of that, the truth of the matter is that we would always, or we would only be producing regional, religious, and ethnic champions as presidents. It's as simple as that.
Well, that's interesting. Well, it's a thought to our consciousness as a people and how we view our country through the glasses of patriotism. Now, whilst this is a political conversation and how it transcends into future election circles, Mr. Yusuf has sparked the debates on how we can think beyond ethnic lines, think beyond political affiliations, and leave legacies even after we're long gone that translates into national unity and development. Now, one of such individuals who has said he has led by example is Alhaji Aliko Dangote, who, speaking in an interview, talked about the fact that wealthy Nigerians should look at investing in Nigeria. He has also faulted capital flight, saying if he lacked the will to lead by example, he wouldn't have invested $20 billion in the world's largest single train refinery, which is sited in Nigeria and not sited in a region where it might have been said to have ethnic or religious ties. It's sited in the most viable economic city in Africa, talking about Lagos. Now, when you look at this call to patriotism from Alhaji Aliko Dangote, what do you make of it?
Well, in an idealistic sense, it's okay to tell people to do that, but what I usually ask myself is how many of such billionaires are actually self-made? How many of such billionaires could actually survive outside of the government? How many of such billionaires are basically not tools where stolen funds, where stolen resources are laundered? So it comes down to the question of sincerity.
He also cited some of the hurdles he faced under President Muhammadu Buhari in coming with the refinery.
Yes. So what he did is commendable, but when you look at the nitty-gritties, the details of it, how he started and how you would think Nigeria would feed that refinery with crude oil, and then he ended up buying crude oil. I remember Ajuri Ngelale, then he was the mouthpiece of Buhari.
The President Bola Ahmed Tinubu.
Yeah, it was President Bola Ahmed. Yes, it was so fast that it looked as if it was in the previous regime.
Quite interesting.
He was talking about how the fact that Nigeria's expectation of a new refinery by Dangote did not mean any change in prices.
It wouldn't translate into cheaper oil prices.
That basically was
quite controversial. I remember it as well.
And I think that was odd, because maybe I'm an illiterate, maybe I'm ignorant, I don't know enough. But my thought was that if there was a new refinery here, private, because we've always had this idea, privatize the refineries, privatize them. The question, why do you have to privatize them? They will tell you it's because there is a lot of corruption. So why is there a lot of corruption? Why can't you just deal with corruption? So we've embraced corruption as a normal part of governance in Nigeria. So when he came, I thought that should bring competition and that should mean anything. But they said he is just like any businessman and any international businessman that would buy crude oil at the international prices and sell to anyone. So it didn't make any sense to me. So the difference between him and any other seller of refined products that Nigeria imports into the country is just that his factory is in Nigeria, and that's all. So what exactly is he trying to say?
Now, there's another angle to this conversation which you've raised, and I was looking at the reports that came in. It seems as though he also spoke about the cabal in the oil industry, and now he's facing challenges with marketers. It's purported that there's supposed to be a nationwide distribution that would be cheaper to commence on the 15th of August. But in reaction to that, some of the marketers are complaining that this would only give him an upper hand in terms of monopoly, and they're kicking against it. How do we balance this conversations on true intent?
The truth of the matter is, I'm one of those who believe that the most important aspects of an economy should be nationalized, should be fixed first, or should be subsidized, should be regulated by the government. I mean, the government can't, you don't privatize your responsibility to citizens. It's just a country that thrives on nothing else other than crude oil. Okay? So what basically is happening is, I think the corruption in it has just been shifted to the private, to private individuals. So every government functionary could do whatever he wants to do and get away with it. So you can't, it's more or less, it's almost a failed state where you claim your only source of income as a country is in the hands of private individuals, and then one sabotages the other because he doesn't want monopoly, he doesn't want this, he doesn't want that. And the only people at the receiving end are the masses. So it's just an unfortunate scenario left to me. Not that I would discourage any private business to come in to go either into power or to go into to go into the oil industry and all of that. It's quite healthy, but as a way to deal with corruption or as a way to boost the economy, it's irresponsible for any government to concede the key aspects of the economy that affect masses and leave them in the hands of private individuals. If they so decide to make a liter 2,000 naira, it's entirely up to them. If they so choose to make it 1,800, it's entirely up to them. Once the government said subsidy has been removed, from about 140, 160, people started paying 1,150, and we are supposed to applaud the government now because it is 890 naira or 910 naira and all of that. So it's an unfortunate situation we found ourselves in the country, and I always tell people that if I woke up in the morning, ask the president of the country, I'd damn whatever international backlash would come, and I'd nationalize that aspect of our economy, because we just haven't gotten it right.
Now, away from oil, Alhaji Aliko Dangote has looked to divest. He's now targeting a commencement of operations in what would now be termed as the deepest seaport in Nigeria. The location is in Ogun State. This is where this new call to other wealthy Nigerians is even stemming from. Many had complained about the monopoly enjoyed by the ports in Lagos. Some of the states, the likes of Akwa Ibom states, have been conversing for their own seaport for years now. You talked about having a smooth relationship with key political figures that make such investments go without any restrictions. What's your view of this proposed deepest seaport to be sited in Ogun?
I think it has to do with the kind of I don't really know if Nigeria will do well as that kind of a capitalist economy where only the rich big boys just thrive well and every other person is at the expense of what they do. Development is quite welcome, and I am very sure other business people or other businesses or other billionaires who are not in a hurry to jump into that have a better understanding of the consequences of certain things. Now, what Dangote is doing actually is doing, he employs a lot of labor and all of that. And yes, that would be welcome, especially with the the monopoly of it that has always been in Lagos and all of that. So at least that basically broadens and does a lot, especially to that state, Ogun. But then I am very sure there is something that it's not, there isn't shame in realizing that a certain path you are towing is not really working, and then you begin to retrace your steps, which I think is the problem of Nigeria. As long as the people suffer, because almost everybody is poor in Nigeria today, somebody earning 500,000 to 1 million naira is not different from those earning 80 or 150,000 naira maybe 10, 15 years ago. So how do you say that an economy survives or an economy thrives when it's only seen at a certain, the markers are only at a certain line. The markers are just basically it doesn't trickle down in a way. Maybe I'm reasoning like a layman, but my thinking is, if there was any policy, if there was any, you adopt a certain kind of practice of economy, and the people on the street, the woman frying akara, the man who's a vulcanizer, the mechanic, the guy trying to buy a car, whether for ease of transportation or for business, the man in real estate and all of that, should be able to say, okay, this route makes a lot of sense and all of that. But then a situation where you just keep saying things and to the masses for 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 years, it just doesn't make sense. It doesn't really add up. So at the end of the day, I think a common sense approach will need to be adopted. But then in the general sense, it's important if there is a businessman who wants to go into business, who wants to divest and all of that. But to what extent? At the consequences of what? Who pays, at the end of the day for... An example is, some people put their hands together and tell you the president took a bold step. All of the presidents who are not bold enough to remove subsidy, he came and he boldly removed it. I wonder how dumb that argument is. Because the question is, so what about it?
There were no provisions in the budget going forward for it as well.
So you removed subsidy and it is applauded as a bold step. The applause is simply coming because you simply kissed the feet of the IMF, the World Bank, and those foreign interests. And that's just all.
Now, in the next 5 minutes, as we look to wrap up this conversation, there are two issues that speaks to the populace. I know a lot of our discussion has been at the upper echelon. Now, bringing it down to the middle class, which is non-existent, whilst we are in multidimensional poverty, is the worry on the thriving Ponzi schemes. Security and Exchange Commission just raised the alarm on 79 Ponzi schemes in Nigeria, just off the back of CBEX, which stole a lot of trillions from Nigerians who were grappling with this current harsh economic realities. What do you deduce from this thriving Ponzi schemes whilst our state of economy is like this?
I've never trusted the government, much as I don't trust those schemers. I've never even trusted the government, even the agencies that claim to fight those things. Because our history will tell us that it is only when they have successfully scammed people then the government steps in. So where do they go to? Do they go to jail? What happens to the money and all of that? It was less sophisticated earlier on. So it went on for sometimes weeks, sometimes months and all of that. And then at a certain point in time, when the capital base is huge enough, in my suspicion, then something will happen. Oh, this is a Ponzi scheme. These are criminals. But how many people get their money back? Or at least if they don't get their money back, who pays, who serves, the consequence of that criminality? So my thinking is that even the government's claim to fight that is a Ponzi scheme on its own. Where has the government, where are those agencies when those billions and trillions were being scammed?
Because it actually takes
Nigeria?
weeks. It doesn't just happen.
Yes, yeah, it doesn't happen in a day. And why do they only step in when it has always achieved 99.9 success? It has always been like that.
Well, these are thought-provoking questions. Final question on the show before I let you go. Most of the youths in Nigeria, whilst we complain about our unemployment statistics, are taking it upon themselves to be involved in content creation. One of the thriving platforms that accommodates such creators is TikTok. It's had its own clampdown in different countries. I know the US has frowned against it. Here in Nigeria, some of the young persons now are even going to explicit contents in a way to look to make an edge. TikTok has clamped down on over 211 million videos worldwide. 3.6 million of those videos that have violated content creation guidelines are from Nigeria in just the first quarter of 2025. What does this speak to our youths and their interest in content creation?
You know, earlier on I said there are people who have gotten to a point where they don't even care whether Nigeria gets fixed or not. It's not simply because we have an unfortunate, ruling class. It's because when you look at people like us, when you look at the generation, the younger people we could call as another generation other than ours, you discover that whatever value has already been lost. Even amongst us, when somebody tells you he is a PA or SA to a politician, he is just a pimp. He doesn't advise him on anything. All he does is to get women to hotels and then arrange things so that the person's wife will not know. When you you meet somebody today and he tells you that he's a content creator, what exactly does that mean? Are you a counselor? Are you a medical doctor? Are you an engineer? Are you a mechanic who chooses to share his expertise via making contents? Or do you just wake up and call yourself a content creator? Most of the content creators in Nigeria...
I like this question you posed.
Yes, most of the content creators in Nigeria just want to be content creators. An example is, I think on Twitter, there is a young girl that has been struggling to be a model. Okay, she's trying to be a content creator and all of that. She had just, I think, about, and honestly, I wish I had an idea of that handle, but she had less than 5,000 followers. And sometimes she displays this clothes, she shows this one, she does this, she does, and nobody follows her. She has little engagements. She woke up one day and decided to do something explicit, exposing all parts of her body and all that. I want to assure you, in about 24 hours, she had over 20,000 followers. There is something the society has become. So the idea of content creation in Nigeria is, once it's going to catch people's attention, it has no bearing whatsoever to any morality. It has no bearing to anything intellectual. It has no bearing to anything political. Go through the so-called content creators. There might just be few who actually are content creators in the sense that they share certain expertise. Yes, they have. But many others, the ones with the biggest followership, you try to follow what they do. He could just come out and tell you, this girl that came to my house wanted to kill me last night, blah, 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 blah. And then you start seeing comments, bookmarks, followership, retweets, and it's 1 million, it's 2 million, it's 4 million. Another one, when they get tired, they don't have engagement. He just cuts a clip from a pornographic scene and then he posts it and he makes a comment. It happens.
Quite interesting.
So basically, it's a welcome idea if they begin to take that up, because just because you can claim that you belong to a certain generation, somebody will say, no, it's Gen Z. But the truth is, whether Gen X, whether Gen Y, whether Gen whatever it is, as long as you are not immune to the consequence of your action, then the older generation has a responsibility to put you in order.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Yusuf. Time, I'm afraid, is not our friend. We appreciate you. Quite thought-provoking conversations this morning on the program. We wish you the best of the rest of today.
Yeah.